What's up, hobby friends and patrons, and welcome to the vlog for September, where I talk about what I painted in the month of August, and then what I've got planned in the coming month, as well as now that we're approaching starting to approach the last third of the year, sort of give a big picture of where I want to be by the end of 2025. So here, snapshot of what I worked on, pretty much a bit of Marvel, and then starting to really put a dent into my space wolves. So let's just dive right on in. So big picture, I got the Inhuman Royal Court done for Marvel Crisis Protocol, and that video is now up on my Patreon. I also worked on my Grey Hunter / Intercessor squads. So there's 5 infantry here. I've got my Suppressors done. I have 3 Thunerwolves, and then just because I wanted to get sort of a big chunk out of the way fairly easily and quickly, I also did all of the Fenrisian Wolf Packs out of the way. So I've got the pack of 5 as a standalone squad, and 2 squads of 3 hunting packs that belong with my head takers. The Royal Court were relatively simple to work on. The figures don't actually have a lot of detail on them, which is actually kind of my preferred style. It gives me a lot of room to do very nice soft blending, especially on my cloth, and I'm not bogged down in detail where the figures take so long to paint. I lose interest halfway through the project, which actually happens in one of the squads I worked on in this month. So we have the King Black Bolt, figure. We have Maximus, probably, like, he's a great figure. I don't know anything about the Inhumans. I don't intend on playing them in the game. This box set was sent to me by Atomic Mass very kindly, so I wanted to paint them, get the tutorials up and up on social media, but I don't think he's ever actually going to see play. In terms of the actual figure, he's probably my least favorite of the 4 that come in the box. I just find his pose a little bit clunky, without anything sort of dynamic or engaging happening, but that's the sculpt I chose. I did like painting the smoke. I think those were little fun pieces to work on. I think arguably my 2 favorite models in the kit are Gorgon and Karnak. So Karnak, I ended up painting him without his chi energy blast. There's these like little stone energy blast things that he's punching forward with his left hand. I chose to disregard that, left that off the piece, and that gives this entire figure a much more martial arts pose. Less so mystical and more so grounded in like MMA or like jiu-jitsu, or I don't know, whatever martial arts he uses. I actually really enjoyed working on this. The combination of sort of the clean lines and the way that the motion is sculpted in the pants as well as his shirt. And then the color combinations, this is a really fun piece to work on. Probably my favorite in the entire box, followed closely by Gorgon. I enjoyed Gorgon compared to the other 3 because his colors are not the same. There's no black, white, and blue, apart from like the sort of the bluish tone steel. So it was nice to be working on a lot more of these earth tones. And the mace head in particular was a fun thing to work on, to experiment with a non-blue or non-neutral gray, non-metal style. Ended up being more of an orangey sort of olive green, camel green color. I think as a splash piece, he's probably going to be the one that sees the most play out of all the 4 of them. My understanding is he's a pretty low threat model, and he's a great way to throw in. I'm not sure if it's a stagger or some sort of condition that he runs around handing out. So if I do want to play a bit more competitively, I think he's probably going to see more splash in my other affiliations. And then because I do have a number of Inhumans already painted, I just chose to base these guys in my standard Marvel Crisis Protocol basing scheme, which is that sort of khaki, like khaki bone, khaki off-white sort of eggshell pavement, and then more of a terracotta sidewalk. My Space Wolves, in terms of the color scheme, are an extension of how I painted them for Horus Heresy. A little bit more polish. I spend a little bit more time getting smoother blends on these guys. I spend more time on the faces and the details. The army's smaller, the figures are bigger, and at least at the time of painting, I thought it was a game I would enjoy a lot more. That being said, having played a couple of games of Horus Heresy, that's also a lot of fun. So I think at some point, maybe next year in the summer, I do want to go back in and add a bit more polish to my 30K Space Wolves. But for the time being, my 4,000 points that's done. I'm pivoting away to try and get some of my other armies done by the end of this year before going back to revisit them. So for this month, I started working on some of the Grey Hunters, and I'm using them as intercessors just because it's a smaller squad and they give more on paper and on the table compared to the Grey Hunter squad, which is unfortunate. But I do use the Grey Hunter models. They've all got bolters or bolters and chainswords. I was never a huge fan when I was a kid painting Space Wolves. This is probably the fourth Space Wolf army I've done, and every army previously I've gone with like skull markings or wolf totems, wolf tails, wolf claws, decals for the pack marking as opposed to geometric shapes. Because when I was younger, I was never a huge fan of that. I wasn't really good at painting that kind of stuff. Now that I'm older, um, my style has definitely changed, and I'm pivoting back to that classic look of using geometric markings and getting those classic pack colors in there. And honestly, a lot of fun to paint. The big difference with the way I'm painting my wolves for 40K versus 30K, I'm using more pin washing as opposed to an overall filter on the oils, which makes cleaning up the models a lot faster. It also means I need to do less work on the armor to do touch-ups and cleanups, which also means that any touch-ups I do on the armor, I can spend that time that I would have done having to do all of the blending to polish the blending. And the end result is it's a faster approach. The armor is done a lot faster with a smoother finish compared to the 30K equivalent, which is a bit more rough, a bit scratchier, which I think works narratively for 30K just because at the height of the heresy, it's going to be a lot more Astartes and Astartes action, and that wear and tear can simulate more of that battle damage and the fact that they're in this hellhole of a war zone. Whereas with 40K, they can have more time to polish and refurbish their armor. One thing I'm trying to do as well is ensure that there is some minor modification or conversion on all of my models. The aim, not counting the wolves, the aim being that if I will eventually bring this army to a tournament, it's going to shoot the army up in the painting rubric. So, for example, all of my Grey Hunters will have 3D printed or additional chest plates. I'm doing head swaps wherever I can. All of the pack marking stuff, all the iconography is free-handed. I'm making sure, because all of my guys are bare heads, I'm trying to use as many unique heads as I can, with some exceptions, because I have a couple of favorite heads. This Heihachi style, I don't know whatever that. He reminds me of a character from, was it Tekken or Soul Calibur? I'm a huge fan of his head, so I've used him in my Thunerwolves as well. I just changed up the skin recipe and the hair recipe, so it's a little bit different, but I really do love this head. But the aim is to have as many unique bear heads as possible. And then where the figures don't have a 3D printed or additional bits elements, if it's just a stock UW kit, then what I'll do is I'll 3D print some elements and I'll use 3D printed heads as a way to incorporate that additional element, that quote unquote conversion I can use to sell those points on the rubrics. These are my suppressors. Long things don't actually exist in the new codex, but narratively it still exists. They're the longer range firepower. They're the older, more grizzled veterans of the army or of the great company. So I figured having a couple of them in the army is a great way. So the suppressors is a great way to introduce that narrative element, even if it's not exactly represented on the tabletop. So the army that I'm building towards, my 2,000 points, it's not fully optimized for competitive play. It's made, or it's got some narrative choices that I've made in the army list. One of them being I've tried to incorporate each of the different pack styles. So having some scouts and blood claws. I want gray hunters. I want long fangs. I want wolf guard. One of the few concessions I do make is I do mix the great companies a little bit. So I'm going to have Logan Grimnar and my Terminators as wolf guard belonging to the great company. And then everything else is going to belong to the Blackmanes. So Ragnar's great company. I'm a Blackmane Stan. That was the first great company that I painted when I first started Space Wolves back in the 2000s. And apart from the one army that I did for the 13th company, back when the Eye of Terror was the campaign running through, I've been doing Blackmane all the way through my Space Wolf Heresy history, 40k and Heresy. So why change? Just go back to my roots. Yeah. So all of my suppressors have 3D printed heads. And then I have a little bit of a talisman here on the back of my sergeant. I also, so a free-handed pack marking for the long fangs, black and white. And then I've been using a combination of the 40k and 30k decals or transfers throughout the army. So you can see I've used a 40k or 30k symbol right here. I've just inverted it to fit inside the pack marking here. And that's something I'm trying to do for all of my pack leaders as well, is to incorporate a bit of extra detailing and quote unquote variation in the pack marking, just to mark them out as a little bit more significant. The only one I wasn't able to do was for the Thunderwolf, just because the right shoulder pad that he has doesn't have room for pack markings, which is, it's fine. I ended up adding a little bit of a special rune on the, I guess where the shield guard would be on his left shoulder pad. And then his model is actually a bit more impressive compared to the other Thunderwolves. So I think that'll make him stand out sufficiently enough. I wasn't aware of this, but evidently Thunderwolves belong to Wolfguard. Narratively, they take elite training, and only the best of the best are able to tame and ride these massive Thunderwolf cavalry. So apparently they're Wolfguard. Something I'm doing is I'm taking different pack markings and I'm modifying them so that they are in the yellow and black Wolfguard colors, but to help signify that they are drawn from different squads and different packs in my army. So I don't have a pack that is going to use this marking yet. It might be the scouts. I don't know. It'll probably have to be the scouts, yeah, because I don't have any other unit that's going to have the same pack marking. I've got this one, which is going to be the pack marking for my blood claws. And these three are entirely 3D printed. I'm not a huge fan of the stock Thunderwolf kit from Games Workshop, and the wolves are too tiny. It's Trueborn Marines, they're not impressive at all. This unit actually ended up taking a lot more time than I thought it would. I had budgeted 3 days to paint the unit, and this was based on sort of the previous budget where like the 5 Great Hunters, this squad took 2 days. My suppressors were also about the same, about 2 days, 2.5 not counting the base. And my Heresy Wolves, I was doing about 5 a day. So I was figuring I would be able to crank out these fairly quickly. But it turns out that the sculpting of the fur on the wolves wasn't very great, and I do a lot more sort of hand painting to bring back that definition and that sharpness. Just a lot of details and bits on the models, which is great. They look great, but I kept finding things to have to paint whenever I thought I was nearing the end. So I think this entire squad of 3 ended up taking me close to like 7 or 8 days, so double the budget. And it set me back a little bit, not just in time, but mentally. I think by about the 3rd or 4th day, I was just frustrated and not happy with the unit while I was painting it. Like the end result, I think they turned out fairly great for what they are. But you know, on the plus side, it did get the bullshit unit out of the way, and I don't have to worry about them again. I need to paint up the trim on these. I actually ran out of matte varnish, and I haven't been able to seal my 3 Thunderwolves. So you can see they still have a bit of a gloss from the contrast base tones on the fur, as well as the shoulder pads. So need to be a little bit careful with this unit until I can get some matte varnish to protect them. And then finally, just because I wanted to knock out a bulk of some stuff, and because I was experimenting with contrast in prep for the Thunderwolves, I painted up all of my Fenrisian Wolves. So this is a combination of the hunting packs that come with the head taper kit, as well as a box of the Fenrisian Wolves, which are quite dated now. And when you compare the two sculpts, you can definitely tell there's a marked difference in the style of the sculpt, as well as the quality of the fur. I really like the head taper wolves a lot more with the fur strands compared to the fur clumps of the Fenrisian wolves. I'm not a huge fan of the old heads. The paws aren't as well defined. Claws aren't so great if they are even there. So yeah, I ended up using contrast, and I did the box art color, which was actually really easy. I think I knocked out all 11 of these wolves in a weekend, which I guess sort of also makes up for the Thunderwolves taking too much time. I mixed and matched the hunting pack with the Fenrisian wolves for the hunting pack units of 3. And then I used all of the hunting pack wolves for the Fenrisian pack, largely because I field the Fenrisian pack that's 40 points, that 5 unit, along with a pack of 3, my 2,000 points. The other 3 wolves are just in case I want to make adjustments to the army, and I figure if I'm painting the wolves anyways, just do them all at once. There's no point not painting them. The actual painting for these is fairly straightforward. It was mostly just steps of contrast, starting with a light skeleton horde for the skin, and then pure skeleton horde working through dark oath, cygor brown, and basilicanum gray to get to the dark patches. And then I went in with a couple of acrylic paints. I think it was like pale sand, light earth, and modern gray, just to add a few base coats to clean up some of the fur and bring back some sharpness, especially on like the mid part and along the spine. And then between painting with the paws, the claws, the teeth, the gums, and the eyes, just your basic flesh tones, that it's brick red and sunny skin tone for all of the pads and the gums, brick red with some spectrum blue for the eyelids, yellow and black for the eyes, and then the bone is just my classic bone color I used for my Marines. I did paint one of my hunting packs in a different color, and that's because I want to be able to differentiate them on the tabletop. Because the base sizes of the hunting pack and the Fenrisian wolves are 40s versus the cavalry base, when I'd have just the 2 of them on the tabletop, it's easy to separate the 2 units. But if I ever do find that I want to run a double hunting pack, I want to be able to say this hunting pack, this squad of 3, this brown one is 1 squad, and this gray one is a 2nd squad. So for this squad, it was Apothecary white through Basilicanum gray and then Black Templar. A bit more dilution for the Basilicanum gray to get the transition. And then I added a bit of a combination of Skeleton Horde and Dark Oath just to get some earthy warm tones in the transition. And then, of course, I went back in with some pale gray and some, I think, medium gray and dark sea gray to also touch up the fur in the midtones and the spine, as well as the paws. I found that the Apothecary white pulled a little bit too much, a little bit too heavily, I didn't dilute it enough, and so I had to go back in and correct that. It was also an issue with the sculpt, which is why I liked the new hunting pack wolves. The fur on the hunting pack is well defined, they're individual strands all the way through. So it's very easy to use the contrast to get that definition. Whereas the older Fenrisian wolf sculpts, especially in the torso, they have these patches that aren't individual strands. And so if you left them in contrast, you'd have like dark splotches where the paint does end up pulling a little bit, unfortunately. And so I found I had to spend more time there just to clean up those areas. Not like a significant amount of time, but it is something you have to pay attention to and make sure that you attend to. Otherwise, I don't think it looks as clean as it could if you just left it as contrast. So this month of September is actually going to be a pretty light month for me in terms of hobbying, or at least the available time I think I will have to paint. I will be out of town September 12th to the 16th. Weekends are usually where I have the biggest chunk of time to paint and hobby, especially now that my wife is back in school. And unfortunately, I will be out of town that weekend doing our sort of friend Horus Heresy event getaway. So guys weekend, I will be just not hobbying, which also means that the weekend prior, at least for the Saturday, I will be running errands to prep. I'll doing some meal prep and food prep beforehand. So I'll probably lose a day there of hobbying. Near the end of September, probably from about the 23rd, 22nd, whatever the weekend is. Yeah, because we have a whole bunch of birthdays, the 25th, the 27th, the 29th. I'm expecting the 27th and 28th as a weekend to be right off as well. Just birthday things and happenings. So my time to paint will be sort of diminished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of try and work on easier kits that are lighter, less detail focused, and try and at least knock some big pieces. I want to paint up my 2 Vindicators and my Land Raider. And then if I have time to paint them, I will also paint up my 5 Incursors. Relatively simple, not covered in detail. They're mostly armor, some pouches, a gun, and heads. So I think these will be great models if I have time to just squeeze in the painting work to at least knock out a squad. Atomic Mass was also kind enough to send me a bunch of Marvel and Shatterpoint kits. So I have the Avalanche pack from Marvel. I don't know who these 2 characters are, but I believe he's Avalanche. Looks like a lot of fun to paint. So I'm gonna try and get some paint on him as well and make him the tutorial for the month of October. If I have time, I'll try and sneak in some other ones as well and get them up. I will also be working on Professor Xavier. I need to get him done for the tutorial for this month. And then they also sent me a couple of packs for Shatterpoints. I've got All the Way, Cassian Andor, K2SO, and some Rebel Troopers, as well as This is Rogue One. So I've got, Jyn Erso, the pilot, Bodhi. One of these is Curate, and then the other one is Malbus, Baze. Yeah, so one of these is Curate, one of these is Baze. I've got Bodhi Rook, and I've got Jyn Erso. So I don't play Shatterpoint, so I'm not going to even bother trying to get these painted for like a tabletop style where they're individual figures. Instead, what I want to do is make a couple of little dioramas or vignettes. So I'll probably do that as like a building focus for this month, and then I'll work to paint them through October. We have a local painting convention / display on November 1st. So I would like to be able to get at least one of these built and painted as a vignette, or that as a display piece. If I can get both painted in October, fantastic. But at least building both of those, I can show them off, show off the cool models, and then work on painting them as sort of a more display-oriented tutorial for Patreon. So in terms of like big picture for the rest of the year, So this is my 40k wolves. This is what I have. If I can get all of this stuff done and fully painted by the end of October, I am a happy man. The aim or the goal I'm pushing for right now is to have the full 2,000 points done by the end of October. It may end up being faster depending on how September goes, or it may end up being longer. I honestly don't know, but I'm trying. Not counting the Thunerwolves, the basic infantry are again fairly quick. I could probably knock out 5 in about 2 days, maybe 3 if they have a little bit more detail in them. The models paint up fairly quickly, and so I think if I can like find the time to just sit down and sort of block it all out, I can put a pretty decent dent and keep this army going on schedule, like like a unit or something done every week. If I'm lucky and I manage to get all of the wolves done by the end of October, I would like to spend November and December finishing up my Seraphon as well. I am not really engaged with Age of Sigmar right now. The current edition and the way the current rules play, along with just sort of where the armies are at right now, most of them are indexes, they haven't had books that are updated. I'm just not really enthusiastic about playing the game. That being said, I still would like to get the army done. At least then I can start 2026 and not have these 2,000 point armies sort of sitting on my painting block, and I can then start to focus on net new projects for the new year. So what I've got left is I've got the 10 riders for the Raptidons, and because September is going to be a light month in terms of what I've got painting tutorial, I'll upload the how to paint the Raptidon steed as well. Won't have the rider in the photos, but I will add the foliage and the ground coverage and the tufts so they at least look good in the photographs. I also have 11 Croxagore, and I've got 5 Temple Guard or Saurus Guard. I do also have the Endless Spells and the Temple. I guess I'll include them in sort of the full 2,000 points to paint. The Temple shouldn't be too hard, but the Endless Spells have a lot of garbage on them. It's the Forbidden Power. So it's got like, especially the Soul Bridge, has all these stupid bones and these like energy, fleshy things wrapped around it. It looks like a nightmare. I don't know how to go about it. Probably airbrushing oils and just try and like cheat my way. But yeah, that's my Seraphon. So that's big picture. Those are the 2 big projects I want to finish by the end of the year. And then of course I will throw in Marvel stuff and try and get through my backlog of that. In terms of where I would like to be by the end, or I guess the start of 2026, in terms of Games Workshop armies, I would like to only have my my Soulblight Gravelords, which will just be more of a passion project, but I don't think I'm actually going to play the army. I will want to update my Caribbean Overlords, but again, because I'm not playing games of Age of Sigmar right now, and probably won't be for the next like 5, 6 months. They're like low priority, probably like way in the back burner. And then because I'm not going to Adepticon, depending on what we vote for our next sort of Guys Weekend Getaway, whether it's Forest Heresy or 40k. If it's Heresy, I'm gonna paint my Saturnine box, and probably, hopefully, if they make me Cataphracti, paint on some Varigard Terminators. If we do 40k, depending on how timing and budget goes, I'm either just going to play my Space Wolves, my 40k, and just sort of expand the army, or I would like to pivot into a Bealtan Wraith Construct army. But if that happens, I'll cover more of that. And then, of course, I'll have my Marvel backlog. I'll have fun Shatterpoint stuff to paint for little vignettes and things like that. So that's where I would like to be at the start of the new year. So I think that'll wrap up this vlog video. I think I rambled a little bit longer than I thought I would on the Space Wolf stuff, but I had some pretty models to show off. So yeah, there you go. Enjoy. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your support, and I will catch you in the next one.